it's still challenging. Being away from your children when they're still so little and needy is difficult. And working with a team who understands your time constraints and figuring out ways to be as efficient as possible so you can give your all to work while you're working and give your all to your family while you're with your family. That's the name of the game.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a great one. Our guest is a mother of two and the editor-in-chief of Working Mother, which helps more than 17 million moms through its websites, magazine, research, social networks, and powerful events. Meredith Bodgas, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you, and I think our listeners are going to absolutely love today's topic and love you as a guest in terms of being able to share what you've learned over your journey as a mother and a working mother. And so before we get into that, I'd love to hear your story. Tell us about you and how you ended up being the editor-in-chief of Working Mother.
Oh, sure. So I have been in the magazine world since college. So that's, I don't want to give away my age, but let's say it's close to a couple of decades now. And I was at many women's service magazines that have since gone bust, like Ladies' Home Journal and, Family Circle is still around. I did some wedding magazines for a while, and then I got into the parenting world, actually before I was a parent myself. But I had been a nursery school teacher while taking classes in college. So that parenting and child rearing had always been an interest of mine. And I worked at Parenting Magazine, and that was my favorite job. So then I actually had children of my own, starting with my son, Jeremy. And I was lucky enough to get the job as the editor-in-chief of Working Mother magazine. And while I was there, I became pregnant with my second child. His name is Zachary, and Jeremy is now 5 years old, and Zachary is 1. And it has been a great place to be as a working mom, obviously, because I'm surrounded by other working parents who have been there themselves professionally, but also just get it. They understand what moms and dads need to be successful at work and at home and how they can support me to do that. And I've also been in the digital world for quite some time too. And that is why this job is the perfect marriage of my interests, being parenting and magazine making, but also website making. So I'm in charge of social media for Working Mother. And as you said, we have a pretty large audience. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter. You can find us pretty much wherever you go on social media. And our magazine comes out 4 times a year. And if you're not already a subscriber, we do deliver to Canada, and we'd love to have you. And you can visit workingmother.com to subscribe.
Wow, that's incredible, and what an incredible amount of moms that you're helping. 17 million, it's phenomenal. I'm sure you're learning new things not only about being a mother and working, but as well the business of getting information out to people and making it all work. You have obviously been there. You're a mother, you're working. What did you find when you started to have children and your career? Was there any conflicts for you? Was it challenging? How did that go?
Oh, sure. Even under the best of circumstances, being a working parent is still difficult. I was at Women's Day magazine when I welcomed my first child, and I was surrounded again by a lot of other parents, mostly women and mostly moms who understood, you know what, when I have to leave at 5 o'clock, I mean no offense, but I got to go if I want to see my baby before he goes to bed. and because daycare is only open so late, and I had quite the commute from the middle of Manhattan to out where I live in the suburbs. So it was great to have their understanding and support, but getting back to work was really difficult for me. Now, having had a second child, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression the second time. I wonder if I had it the first time, because I remember having a lot more trouble adjusting to being back at work post-maternity leave. My first day back, I cried the whole time. And luckily I had an editor-in-chief at that time who had been there, and she said, yeah, I'm an American, so our maternity leave policies are not anywhere close to what Canada has. I was back in a chair at 12 weeks postpartum, and that's not really enough. I hadn't healed physically, and I definitely hadn't healed emotionally yet. So she allowed me to cry in her office, and I got nothing done that first day. And even though everybody was understanding around me, I pride myself on my work ethic. So I was not comfortable with the fact that I was not producing anything that first day back. And I had to get used to pumping. That was a brand new thing for me. And pumping 3 times a day in a new place, not knowing exactly what the setup will be, what the time constraints are. I worked in a building that had a special wellness center, really nice place just for pumping moms. And there was competition to get rooms, even though they had 3 separate rooms and only so many of us were pumping moms. There were prime times and not prime times. And if you wanted a prime time, you sometimes had to bargain with the other ones who had already been there for longer than you to get those times. So it wasn't an easy transition back my first time. My second time, it was easier. I was able to take 16 weeks off, and that extra month for me made a huge difference. And I had gotten the diagnosis, and I was on medicine, and that helped me. So I think that is something there's a lot of stigma around still. And with my first, that I was so terrified of being diagnosed that I think I was not entirely honest with my doctor, and that hurt me at work. So the second time around went much more smoothly. I was excited to be back. I knew what I had to do. I knew what to expect from pumping. I had already checked out what the area was going to be for me. And with some help from my colleagues, we made it even better than it was. So it's still challenging. Being away from your children when they're still so little and needy is difficult. And working with a team who understands your time constraints and figuring out ways to be as efficient as possible so you can give your all to work while you're working and give your all to your family while you're with your family. That's the name of the game.
Wow. It never ceases to amaze me what mothers have to go through raising children. And, as a father myself, I have my own challenges, but nothing in comparison to what women have to deal with psychologically, physically.
Right.
And in your story, there is many messages, one of them being having supportive people around you. It's not probably common that every organization would have the type of support and openness about what you're dealing with.
That's true.
What would you recommend for people that don't have those supportive environments? How do they get out and get supportive people around them?
Sure. The biggest thing is that people who are not immediately supportive aren't necessarily mean-spirited. They just might not know. There's still, even though there's so much information online and people are more open about giving birth and coming back to work and all that goes with it than ever before, there is still so much mystery around what delivering mothers go through. So my advice is always to tell people. Sometimes it might be too much information for them, but that's the only way people who aren't parents themselves are going to understand what you're going through, or even people who are parents themselves. There are plenty of dads and others out there who might have children in their family or, their parents themselves, but they don't remember what it was like, or they were left out of the ugliness that's associated with giving birth and those early stages with a newborn, that they really don't understand what their coworkers are going through. So I give facts, not to the point of grossing anyone out, but I say, hey, I'm going to be away from my desk for 30 minutes because I have to go pump. And, one time someone said, pump what? And I explained, I have to pump breast milk using a breast pump so I can feed my baby when I get home later and when he's at daycare tomorrow. And, the young man's eyes just, almost burst out of his head. But that was really the first time he had heard somebody talk about pumping, something as natural as giving birth itself. He had just never encountered it before. So I think from that moment on, he was kind of like, oh, is there anything you need? What can I do to help? And it's just sharing that information with people, sharing your experience, being as open about it as you feel comfortable, of course. Don't do anything that makes you uncomfortable. But until we get to a place where all the things that women go through coming back to work after having a child is shared openly, then there's still going to be a lot of difficulty in making that transition back. So tell people everything you're willing to tell them, and ask them, do you have any questions about it? You're a better source for them than them just going off on the internet and trying to find reliable information. A woman is going through this herself, and if you have a good relationship with that person, be the source for them. And ask for what you need. For me, it was, I needed more than the paid maternity leave that was offered at my current company. Yes, even at Working Mother, we are owned by a larger company that has many other magazines under it. And our maternity leave policy was not up to snuff. We were not on par with our magazine publishing competitors. And it was up to me if I wanted to make a change for everyone who came behind me. I was the best person to make the case to our white male CEO, who's a dad, but he had never given birth himself. I believe his wife was a stay-at-home mom. So I educated him on exactly what the kind of policy that parents need to make a successful transition back to the workplace. And I made the business case for it. And that's the other thing, showing people that spending a little money short term to maintain great workers is worth it in the long run. So just ask for what you need and spell it out for them.
Beautiful. I love that. You also talked about, on the second go-round, you had a plan. You knew what you dealt with, and you figured out a plan to minimize the impact that it would have on your life. Was this something that you had learned or someone mentored you through? Where did that come from?
Firsthand experience. It's from the first time when I came back to work. I was not prepared for how difficult it was going to be being away from such a small child, and making sure that my schedule was as efficient as possible, making sure that I was not saying yes to everything that people had asked me to be involved in. I was only saying yes to what I absolutely needed to be there for. I just learned that I needed to delegate better than I had been, and making the plan was just, it was the byproduct of seeing how I could have been more successful in my first transition back. But I fully believe that moms and dads are more successful when they have somebody at their office who has been through this before and will be the one to take initiative and say, hey, it's going to be really hard when you get back for lots of reasons. But here are the three things I think you should focus on. And I think a lot of parents would respond very well to that kind of coaching, because all it does is help them make a smoother transition. And, not everybody has a hard go at it. Some people are really excited to go back to work and really want to, and, they snap right back into their routine. But not everybody does that. And having somebody who has been through it before, especially at your own workplace, a lot of small business owners, if there's somebody who's made the transition back to work after taking leave, if that person can help the next person and really just explain their experience and be the person who answers their questions, I think a lot of workplaces would be better off, and not just the parents would benefit.
Well said. You have mentioned, and there's been a bit of writing around the guilt that mothers face. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there are so many mixed messages sent mostly to mothers, to dads too, increasingly so. Unfortunately so, dads are getting more mixed messages than ever. But women traditionally, historically, have been getting the most mixed messages. And what I mean by that is we're told you should stay home with your children. And in the same breath, we're told you should be contributing to your family's income. But those are obviously contradictory statements. So what winds up happening is moms, working moms, and stay-at-home moms wind up feeling incredible amounts of guilt, no matter which path they choose or which path they have to go down. Sometimes it's not a choice. If you don't have the skills to make enough money in a career, then daycare might not be affordable for you, given your given the salary you could make. And on the flip side, if you have a partner or a partner who doesn't make a lot of money, or you're a single mom, you might not have a choice. You have to work. So whether you have a choice or you don't have a choice, there is a lot of feeling of shame that you're not doing enough for your children or you're not doing enough at work. And that is constantly a battle with people who love their families, which is most parents, and people who want to do a really great job for their employers. So it's difficult. It's something that's kind of all-consuming if you let it be, but you just have to decide, here are my priorities, and it's not your priorities for the rest of your life. It's here are my priorities today. Sometimes my husband will be my priority. Quite honestly, sometimes he won't be. But you figure out exactly what you need to get done that day, and you take it day by day and decide what is most deserving of your time at that moment, and how do you make the most of it.
I can appreciate that, and being a father, it is often such a busy world, right? And they just want our attention. They want the love. They want to play with us. They want all of these things, and our world does not always permit that. And so the guilt can creep up around, gee, am I providing enough? Is there enough quality time? Is there these questions? And so I like the aspect of one day at a time. And also for myself, it's hey, looking forward. It's like, well, that was yesterday. What did we do? What can we do better today? And I'm reminded by so many of our wonderful audience. We have many, many listeners who have already been here. They've done that. They've, have older children that have moved on, perhaps even into their lives now, and many, many grandmothers and grandfathers. And they keep saying, it's like, you know what? That time in your life is very short, and it's going to disappear, and you'll want it back, and you won't be able to have it back. So take it one day at a time, be gentle on yourself, and always support yourself by being around people who have been there and can provide that help. Now, like you said, everybody deals with these situations differently. And it speaks to this concept of balance that people talk about. How do you balance all of it and make it all work? What do you have to say about that?
Well, balance has become a bit of a dirty word, at least at Working Mother, because we're never completely in balance. We like to talk about integration and just doing the best you can at each hour of the day, rather than having everything be 50-50. So you give your best when it's most important to give your best. So what I mean by that is, if you, like, for instance, right now, you are my priority. I am speaking to lots of great moms out there, and it's so important to me that nothing else is detracting from my attention. And that's the kind of decision I make on an hourly basis. So when I'm at work, it's usually work. That's my priority. But of course, if daycare calls me, hey, your child is sick and needs to be picked up right away, well, then I'm out of balance, but that's okay, because I'm going to pick it up later or the next day, or I'm going to delegate to somebody who could pick up the slack for me while I get my child. And luckily, I have a very small team. There's just 5 of us, but we all have each other's backs. There's 3 of us who are moms and 2 who don't have children yet, but they have lives outside of work. And I show them that their lives are as important as my life, even though I have, a few more responsibilities than they might. But if they need to come in late or leave early, okay, because they're going to allow me to do that when I need to do that. So, even though it's never perfectly 50% family, 50% work, because also that's not our entire lives. We have interests and hobbies besides family and work. And if you're talking about work-life balance, it's usually just family-work balance. So nothing is 50%, 50%. It's a little bit of everything when it makes sense to prioritize that particular item. And it's just calling on the people who can help you. And even though, we're not all privileged to have people who can help us, finding people who you are willing to help, that automatically makes them want to help you too. So just give what you get, and you get what you give.
It's remarkable. I would imagine you've got a small team, but that small team is essentially collecting information that is very specifically geared towards educating working mothers. So you must see lots of the conversation around the problems that are happening out there and the challenges that they're facing, as well as a lot of the thought leaders and people that are helping to provide education and information to help solve those problems. What would be the big aha moments that you've had working with Working Mother?
Sure. So there have been so many that I'm just going to focus on all the things I've already learned today. So for instance, I came across a story about a working mom who believes that instead of exit interviews, when somebody's leaving a company, they'll meet with HR, or they'll meet with some other person who is responsible for finding out why they're leaving and what the company can be doing better. Instead of those, or at least in addition to those, why not have life stage interviews? And I think that's a brilliant concept. And what I believe the author meant by that is, when somebody is welcoming a child, come back to work. Don't just, here's your job, do your job, now you're a mom, just continue doing what you were doing before. Take a step back and have an interview about what has changed in your life, and what about the job might have to change as a result, or what about the job can't change, and come to a compromise together with management and your team and figure out what is going to be the best. I think that is a way to keep people happy and to make sure everyone is doing their best work, because if you don't openly discuss how things have changed, then you're just going to do things the way, they've always been done, or the way that you think they should be done. It needs to be a dialogue, and everyone needs to come together and recognize that there are many challenges and come up with some solutions together. So that's one thing I read today. Another one, there was just a survey released that found that working moms don't necessarily want raises, but they want help with affording childcare. So you would think that, money is money, but it turns out it's not. They just want reliable childcare that they can depend on, that's high quality, where their children are learning. So, even though personally, I want a raise, but most moms, they want help with securing childcare, because at least in the United States, it is really difficult to find a spot at a high quality childcare center that you can afford, that your child can stay at, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 5 days a week. So because that's so difficult, companies really have an opportunity to step up here, either with on-site childcare or just resources that connect their employees with different childcare centers that are out there, to make the transition to going back to work easier, and making sure that these children are well cared for and that the service is affordable.
Absolutely. It's there are so many challenges in our society with work and keeping up with our own lives, our own health, and the speed of change, and then add to that families, children, the impacts that these decisions that we make have on our children and how they learn. So there's lots of challenges. And would there be for our listener, and our listener, many of them run small businesses, and many of them are solo. They work by themselves, on their own. What have you found or heard with what they might be dealing with? They don't have an organization. It's like right. They're in charge, right? So yeah. They have some unique challenges, I would think, and I'm sure of your 17 million, there's probably a good chunk of them, yes. Right?
Definitely. So for business owners, entrepreneurs, or just people who are working for themselves, there is still power in numbers, even if you are a one-woman show. joining together with like-minded folks in the same position as you. Sometimes you consider yourself competitors to these people, but talking with them and sharing your specific challenges and bonding together to provide solutions. If you do have other people on your team, figuring out ways together to help those. So for instance, now co-working spaces are popping up all over in the States. I don't know about in Canada, but I know, at least in the big cities in Canada, it's happening there too. And those co-working spaces, the next step is going to be on-site childcare at those co-working places. And that is something that could be that could make a huge difference in the lives of entrepreneurs and business owners who tend to work by themselves or with very small teams, because they're not at a big company that can provide those benefits for them, but they can go to these spaces, and one of the benefits might be childcare right on site or a discount at a nearby childcare center. But the only way to find out about those is to talk with others in your area who do the same thing as you do, or at least who are in a similar situation in that they don't belong to a large organization that just offers these benefits to everybody. So it's really just meeting those people, finding them. Facebook obviously is great for finding everyone who's exactly like you, or at least very close to what you're dealing with, what you're experiencing, and talking with them and connecting with them. So join those groups, join those subreddits also, and meet those people. And that's the way you're going to find out exactly what's available in your area, or if it's not yet available, how you can work together to make it be. There are a lot of people out there who are starting their own co-working spaces because there's a need. And if the larger co-working companies haven't come to your area yet, you can be the one to make a space that has childcare. It's not going to be easy, of course, but if you're banding together with other folks, that can make a big difference in their lives, in your life, and so many others.
So refreshing. I absolutely love that concept. And, it really speaks to community, having a shared space where those shared people are helping each other with whatever problem that they're having or challenge that they're facing, whether it be shared childcare or other resources. It really speaks to together we're better. We can accomplish so much more. This has been a fantastic conversation. I would love for people to learn how they could learn more about you, learn more about Working Mother. What would be the best way for them to do that?
Oh, sure. So visit workingmother.com. We post the most inspiring, the funniest, and the flat out enraging stories that matter to working moms and working dads. We do even though our name is workingmother.com, we are very interested in talking to dads, and we support them too. We have our best companies for dads list. Last year was our inaugural year. We're doing it again this year. So join us. Visit workingmother.com. Go to Facebook. Check us out there. We're Working Mother Magazine on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at _WorkingMother_. Just follow us where we are, and that is where you'll learn too much about my life, but it's also where you'll get a lot of advice and see what else is going on out there. Finding the things you didn't even know you needed to be mad about and what to get mad about, and then of course what to do about it to improve the situations for others like us.
So awesome. You've been amazing in sharing your wisdom, your personal story. On behalf of our audience, who many may be dealing with some of the things that you've shared about on this episode, I want to thank you for your time and generosity with the things you know.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been great. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. And one little message: if you found this podcast episode to be valuable, please let us know about it. Wherever you listen to your podcast, leave us a review and let us know what you're getting value out of this podcast. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.